Good morning to you. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We're going to start a new series today. We'll start it this way. Can you recall an instance where either you or somebody you know experienced an unpleasant consequence because they treated a directive like an elective? And if you've got young kids, you'd be like, that's my house every day. But even as an adult, your doctor can say, you need to cut back on sugar, you need to cut back on salt, or you're going to have some health problems. And you treat that like it's an elective, not a directive. You don't make any changes to your diet, and you end up with the health problems that your doctor told you would come. Or you're in college and you've got a paper that's due on a certain day, and the professor said, it's due this day, no exceptions. And you decide, I'll turn it in 3 days late because you treat it like an elective rather than a directive, and you get a failing grade. Or when you go through security at the airport, and there's signs everywhere that tell you, you can't take a water bottle on this plane. And the person in front of you, what are they trying to do? They're trying to take a water bottle on the plane because they're living like these directives just don't apply to you. I had a friend back when I was living in Nashville, just out of college, and on more than one occasion, he would call me. This is before pagers and cell phones. He would have to walk to a gas station and call me, and he said, I've run out of gas in my car. Can you come get me? Now, the first time was fine. Second time, I'm a bit concerned. Third time, we had a heart-to-heart. And I just said, do you see the dashboard on your car? You get in it, you turn the thing on, you see the dashboard. Do you see the little thing that has an F and an E? That E doesn't stand for elective. You've got a directive in front of you is that your car needs gas to go. So it's really important to understand what is an instruction and what's just a suggestion. Or another way to put it is it's critical to know the difference between a maybe and a must, especially if you are a follower of Jesus. Because it's tempting to treat Jesus like he owns a cafeteria. And we're going to go in there, we're going to look at all of his instructions, and we're going to choose which of these commands we're going to put on our tray, which ones we're going to obey, and which ones we just might obey. So we're going to spend a few weeks, Lord willing, heading up to Easter, looking at what Jesus said was a must if you're going to follow him. And you need to know, first of all, that Jesus lived this way. He lived his life out of a divine sense of necessity. Jesus didn't live his life guided by might. He lived his life guided by must. And I'm going to show you this. The very first recorded words we have of Jesus are in Luke chapter 2. Jesus is 12 years old. His parents have gone to Jerusalem for a feast, and they have left, and they have accidentally left him behind. They think he's with them. He's not. They turn around and go back, and they find him in the temple in Luke chapter 2, verse 49. And it says, he replied, why were you looking for me? Didn't you know that I must be in my Father's house? As early as 12 years old, he's living his life according to what he must do, not what he might do. So he starts his public ministry, and he's in a town, and revival breaks out. This is 2 chapters later in Luke chapter 4. And the disciples don't want him to leave. The disciples are like, let's stay. Things are going good right here. But Jesus says in verse 43, I must proclaim the good news of the kingdom of God to the other towns too, for that is what I was sent to do. So Jesus, right off the bat, doesn't base his life on what the crowd wants him to do, on what the popular opinion is for him to do. He's basing his life on what his Father said he must do. He must be faithful to his Father's mission. Another time in John chapter 10, I know first sermons are always bouncy. In John chapter 10, Jesus tells some people that are all Jews. They've been listening to him here, and he tells them in John chapter 10, verse 16, I have other sheep that do not come from this sheepfold. I must bring them too. And they will listen to my voice, so there will be one flock and one shepherd. He says, I've got a must from my Father, and it's to go not just to the people that I'm here talking with now, but I've got people from another sheepfold, and I've got to bring them in too. But probably the most important must statement of Jesus is in Mark chapter 8, and it's the one the disciples push back on. In Mark chapter 8, verse 31, it says, Then Jesus began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things, and be rejected by the elders, chief priests, and experts in the law, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. See, Jesus lived his life under the shadow of a divine must. And that mission was going to take him to a cross. Because he didn't live his life based on a might. He lived his life based on a must. So it makes sense then, if we are followers of Jesus, that our lives are not driven by maybe. Or to put it another way, true discipleship embraces the mustness of the life of Jesus. Because you can't call Jesus Lord and then treat his directives like they're electives. You can't call Jesus Master and then think that his demands can be negotiated. A life of a disciple is a life that is called to the expected, to the necessary, and to the required. And this is not legalism. This is surrender. There was a man named Joseph Kahn who was born in the Soviet country of Romania. And he went to school in London, but he led a revival in Romania when he was older. Went back to his homeland, back to a communist country, and led a revival. Now, there was a Baptist pastor named Adrian Rogers who went to visit Kahn and to try to be part of that revival. And in their conversation, he asked Joseph Kahn, what do you think about Christianity in America, where I am from? And Joseph Kahn said, well, you in America are really big into commitment. And Adrian Rogers kind of smiled and said, that's a good thing, right? And Kahn said, no, not really. Because commitment keeps you in control. You can commit to pray every day. You could commit to read your Bible every day. You could commit to lose weight. You could commit to pay your mortgage. But when you're tired of things, you decommit from them. And he says, you've never had a soldier put a gun to your head. Because when a soldier puts a gun to your head, he doesn't ask you to commit. He asks you to surrender. And Jesus has not called us to a life of commitment. He has called us to a life of surrender. In other words, when you sign up for the Jesus life, the first thing you must do is give up your own. So now we're ready to start this series. And there's no other way to start this series than with this verse in Mark chapter 8, verse 34. Because it's the very first must that you must obey. Mark chapter 8, verse 34, Jesus says, if anyone wants to become my follower, he must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. This verse was deep on the heart of a man named Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who wrote in a book called The Cost of Discipleship. And he said that when Jesus calls a man, he bids him to come and die. Jesus did not depict the cross as a possibility, but as a necessity. A cross for every disciple is a directive, not an elective. And Jesus would make no exceptions. Jesus was never so desperate for recruits that he would water down his demands to people that didn't want to invest that much. And they tried. Oh, Jesus, let me go do this. Let me first go take care of that. Let me go handle this, and then I'll be back. And Jesus wouldn't have it. He could have had people of wealth and power and status, but he let them walk away because he wasn't going to change the terms. You must deny yourself and take up your cross daily. And it's hard for us to understand that statement, how much that statement, we're 2,000 years away from that statement. To us, the cross has become a symbol of beauty. We put crosses on top of churches. We wear crosses as jewelry. I'm not against either one of those things. But for a moment, I want you to hear what Jesus' audience would have heard when he said, you've got to take up your cross, because nobody in that audience associated a cross with anything beautiful. They'd seen crosses. They'd seen people carrying crosses. And when they saw someone carrying a cross, they thought to themselves, get a good look at that person, because you're never going to see that person again. That person is on their way to die. So Jesus, what are you saying when you say, I've got to take up my cross daily? Here's what Jesus is saying. This is the first blank on your outline. That life in Jesus starts with death. Life in Jesus starts with death. Maybe you can see why in Mark chapter 8, Peter's so shocked. I mean, Peter hears Jesus say that martyrdom is a possibility for being a disciple. And we know from church history that nearly all of the disciples were killed for their faith. Even today, Christianity Today magazine estimates that 13 Christians a day are martyred around the world. For some people, that's what taking up a cross means. That you're not going to deny Jesus even when it might cost you your life. But if we're honest, for most of us, we're not going to have to make that choice. And I think Jesus knew that. I think he knew that not everybody was going to face that life or death decision of an actual cross. And I think that's why he said, you've got to do this daily. You've got to take up your cross daily, because Jesus understands that for most of us, he's not talking about imminent death. He's talking about embracing a radically reoriented life. That the cross is more than just a symbol of salvation. The cross is a model of somebody who's living a completely countercultural life. It's a countercultural way of thinking. Jesus is calling us to live a crucified life every day, and it's a must. So, how do we apply that? How does that get real? What does it look like to live a crucified life? So I want to share with you a couple of things. There's 3 points, and they're not numbered on your outline, but this is point 1. It's the second blank on your outline. Sorry, she's away. So, first, taking up a cross means he is greater than me. He is greater than me. You've heard people say, well, that's just my cross to bear. And they might be talking about some kind of sacrifice or hardship that they're enduring. It might be trying to modify how they live. I'm trying to spend less. I'm trying to be nicer. I'm trying to do less time on screens. But notice that Jesus doesn't say you must deny yourself things. He says you must deny yourself. To take up a cross means that I put to death promotion of self. And that is a 180-degree, completely countercultural narrative to the world. Because the predominant narrative of our culture is that if you want to be happy, then you do you. You promote you. You seek your happiness. You express your self-sovereignty. And you can't be happy if you let any limit, any tradition, any religion, any law, even your own biology, from keeping you from being who you want to be. And in pursuit of self, we now have a society where loneliness and anxiety and depression have skyrocketed. As a nation, we've never been more unhappy with ourselves. It's a tremendous amount of pressure that we put on young people. If you're not happy, it's because you're not doing you right. One other reason why self-promotion always fails, it's because you and I don't own kingdoms. The world is constantly going to frustrate you in your pursuit of self-sovereignty because nobody else recognizes your kingdom. We were all born into a kingdom. We're all extras in a movie that is not about us. And Jesus came to deliver us from McMinnville, this self-centered lifestyle that just leads to anxiety and depression and disappointment. And when you realize what Jesus has come to do, it is so liberating. Because if my daily purpose isn't to promote me, but to promote Jesus, then nothing can frustrate my purpose. There is no defeat. There's no setback. There's no disease. There's no diagnosis. There's no enemy. Nothing that can happen today or tomorrow. No situation I'll ever be in is going to deprive me of an opportunity to exalt Jesus. So I need to have the same attitude that John the Baptist had. When Jesus came on the scene, people started going to hear Jesus talk instead of John the Baptist. And they came to John and said, hey, people are going to hear Jesus. And John said, I couldn't be more thrilled because he's got to increase. I have to decrease. Because John was living in a movie that was called Jesus is Lord. So are we. And when we take up our cross daily, we keep the plot of that movie from getting hijacked. We die daily to the promotion of self and to the ambition for power. And if I haven't stepped on your toes yet, here we go. Because here's the second point. Next blank on your outline is that under is better than over. Taking up a cross daily means that under is better than over. What do I mean by that? Power is so seductive and power is so addictive that it's easy to convince ourselves that the goal is just to make sure the right people have power. If the right people have power, then everything will work out. Everybody will be what we want them to be. That's the temptation that Satan put in front of Jesus. Satan told Jesus, I'll give you every kingdom of the world. Jesus could have thought, you know the good I could do? You know the good I could do if I had all the power? If I could just force people to do the right thing. Think of all the good I could do. Think of all the evil I could get rid of if I just took the power from myself. And the great lie is that we're going to change the world from the top down. It's the old paradigm. It's what the crowds wanted Jesus to do. Go be king. Make everybody do what you want. It's what the disciples wanted Jesus to do. They thought they were following somebody who was going to march into Jerusalem and then shortly thereafter march into Rome and tell the whole world what they were going to do. But Jesus does not change the world from the top down. He changes the world from the bottom up. And he said it was a must for his disciples to get that. Because they were always arguing about who's going to be in charge, who's going to be elevated, who's going to get to be over. I want to make sure that I'm over him. I want to make sure that we're over them. I want to make sure that we've got the power. We still do this. Most of our fights in our families, in our churches, in our government is this question: who's going to be over? And here's what Jesus said to that in Mark chapter 10. He said, you know what the Gentiles do. What the rulers of the Gentiles do. They lord power over each other. Their high officials exercise authority over them. And Jesus said, not so with you. Because whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be your slave. The data says that one of the reasons that a lot of young people are walking away from Christian faith is because they're seeing an older generation that is so desperate for political power. They will completely jettison core Christian character values in order to get it. And that's not the way of Jesus. Listen closely to me. The way of Jesus is not to force Christianity on other people. The way of Jesus, the way of the cross, is to force other people to acknowledge that nobody loves or serves more selflessly than Christians do. I love the story of Jackie Robinson. Lord willing, we've got plans to visit some other ballparks in this country. And I love the fact that you can go to any major league ballpark in the country and you'll see a blue 42 that's retired. His number is retired across all of baseball. Jackie Robinson was the first African American to play in Major League Baseball. He was recruited by a guy named Branch Rickey. Branch Rickey was an executive for the Brooklyn Dodgers, and he sought out Jackie Robinson, not just because Jackie Robinson was a phenomenal baseball player, but because Jackie Robinson was also a strong Christian. He was a strong follower of Jesus. And they had a hard talk before Rickey would offer Robinson a contract. He told Robinson what kind of abuse he would face, that people did not want to see an African-American man playing pro baseball. And he told Robinson, you can never one time retaliate against any of the ugliness that you're going to see. And Jackie Robinson said, you mean you want a guy that doesn't have the guts to fight back? And Branch Rickey said, no, I want a guy who has the guts to not fight back. Because if you curse them back, all they'll ever see is your curse. If you swing back, all they'll ever see is what you did. He went straight to the Gospels and he said, like Jesus, I need you to play well on the field and turn the other cheek. Can you do that? And Jackie Robinson said, if you'll give me the uniform, I'll give you the guts. See, the power of the cross is the power of self-sacrificial love, and the kingdom of darkness has no answer for it. The devil has no answer for people who are willing to be under. But it's hard to let go of the ambition for power in a culture that is so obsessed with winning. And so taking up the cross means one more thing. This is the last blank on your outline. It means that to lose is stronger than to win. To lose is stronger than to win. And we love to win. We'd rather win than be right. It reminds me of a story of a married couple that were arguing with each other, and then they started giving each other the silent treatment. And for several days, they did not speak to each other. They saw each other a lot, but they did not speak to each other. And they were both too proud to say, I'm sorry, and to reconcile. Well, it's Sunday night, and they still haven't spoken to each other. And the guy has got to get up very early Monday morning to catch a flight. He's a heavy sleeper. And his wife usually helps him with a reminder, hey, it's time to wake up. But instead of apologizing, instead of talking to her, he's too proud for that. So he just leaves a note on her side, on her little nightstand. He leaves a note that says, it says, please wake me up at 5 a.m. He wakes up the next morning. It's not 5 a.m., it's 9 a.m. He has missed his flight. He's furious. He's going to go find his wife and chew her out. But when he gets up, he sees a note on his bedstand that's in his wife's handwriting that says, it's 5 a.m., wake up. That's how we live, because we'd rather win than be right. Please understand, the very first disciples joined the Jesus movement because they thought they were following a winner. They thought he's going to set up a kingdom. He's going to be in charge. He's got all this power. He's going to kick the Romans out. He's going to set up a throne and put us on thrones all around him. And when Jesus said, I must go and die, Peter says, no. We're on our way to a coronation, not a crucifixion. But Jesus' agenda was not to march on Jerusalem and conquer. It was to march to Jerusalem and suffer. And so when the soldiers came for Jesus, Peter still wanted to win. He wanted to win so badly, he drew a sword and attacked one of the guards. Jesus told Peter to put his sword back in its place. He said in Matthew 26, verse 53, do you not think I can call on my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? But how then would the scriptures be fulfilled that say it must happen this way? Jesus said, I must lose, not win. He modeled a way of living that hinged on losing the right way for the right reason. And then he said, I want you to take up your cross and do that too. There's a big difference between choosing losing and just losing. When somebody hurts you and you have the capacity to hurt them back, but you choose to lose, you turn the other cheek. Somebody curses you and you're good with words and you could curse them back and dominate the conversation, but you choose to lose and bless them instead. Somebody wounds you and they say they're sorry and you're not sure they mean it. But you choose to lose and say, I forgive you. And our flesh wants to push back against us. Our flesh wants to say, nobody's going to take advantage of me like that. Nobody's going to push me around like that. And every day we're tempted to abandon the must of Jesus and turn it into a maybe. And that's why a disciple of Jesus has to have a very different definition of what a win looks like. I'm going to go back to Joseph Kahn, the man that led that revival in Romania. He went to study theology in Europe, and he wanted to go back home, and they told him, if you go back to Romania where the communists are in control, they will kill you. And he prayed about it, and the Lord put Matthew chapter 10 on his heart. I am sending you out as sheep among wolves. And Joseph Kahn went back. He was constantly under harassment. He was constantly under threat of imprisonment. He was put in prison. He was tortured. One time he was in captivity, and a guard pulls out a gun and puts it to his head and says, we could kill you now. And Joseph Kahn said, go ahead. He said, you know my sermons are all over this country. Go ahead and kill me, because you'll sprinkle my sermons with blood. And people will listen to them 100 times more than they do now, because they'll know I died for what I believed in. Go ahead, kill me. And they didn't do it. They threw him out of the country. But he wrote later in his life that all the early years of his life, he was trying to save his life and he was losing it. He was looking for a reason to live. He said, once I was ready to lose my life, only then did I truly save it. We have to live as if we're already dead. And maybe that's why Jesus chose baptism as the place where you start this life of discipleship. We often think of baptism as the end of the road of discipleship. It's the beginning. In baptism, you are publicly declaring to everyone watching you that you're going to live a crucified life. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to die with Jesus, because I believe that living a crucified life with Jesus is how to truly be alive. And if you're going to follow Jesus, death is a must. And Jesus isn't so much leading us into a grave, he's leading us out of one. He said to his disciples in John 12, verse 24, he said, very truly I tell you, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. Anyone who loves their life will lose it, while anyone who hates their life in this world will keep it for eternal life. Whoever serves me must follow me. And where I am, my servant will also be. My Father will honor the one who serves me. If you follow Jesus, you're going to wind up at a cross just like Jesus did. And that's where the Father will find you and give you great honor and save your life for eternity. Jesus never promised a disciple comfort. He promised his disciples glory. And that's not a maybe. His promise is a must. And if you remember that, maybe that would help you take up your cross every day. We're going to stand and we're going to sing. And I've got to ask you, is Jesus Lord or not? The answer can't be sometimes. It can't be, well, it depends on the situation. Every day is going to present you with a decision and an opportunity. Am I going to choose the Jesus way? What's that going to look like for you? It's going to look different. I think everybody listening to this sermon, whether it's here, whether it's online, everybody listening to this sermon has a unique way that they could be more dead in their life of following Jesus. And so if there's anything that we can do in our human strength to come alongside you and maybe help you find that way, we offer ourselves to you in all of our human strength. Maybe today is the day where you want to die. You want to choose the crucified life. You want to put faith in Christ and be baptized, telling everyone that I want to live the life of Jesus. And that starts with dying to myself. Whatever your need is, whether it's to become a Christian and put on Christ in baptism, or to just ask for the prayers of the church, we just ask you, make the need known. Come forward while we stand and while we sing.